First of all, thanks to those members who attended the briefing session on disability run by OFMDFM on the Massachusetts model, hence the slightly late start to today's session. We have one briefing today. It comes from the Department on its consultation on delivering social change for children and young people. We'll then consider the written briefing on the summary of responses to the Department's consultation on its draft indicators for good relations. You may recall we did consider this last week and we agreed to leave it for a week to give members time to further consider. In terms of apologies, we have three, Megan Fearon, Bronwyn McGann and Jimmy Spratt. Is anybody aware of any other late arrivals or apologies? No. Okay. Last week, the committee agreed in principle to sponsor a motion to support Refugee Week. It was pointed out to us it was also going to be a Community Relations Week in the same time frame of 16 to 22 of June. So the clerk very kindly amended the draft motion, and at page 5 of your packs you will read that the draft now reads that this Assembly notes that 16 to 22 June 2014 marks both Refugee Week 2014 and Community Relations Week 2014. Further notes the respective themes of shared future and building a united community, and expresses its support for both Refugee Week and Community Relations Week, particularly in relation to their shared aim of facilitating positive encounters between diverse cultures in order to encourage greater understanding, overcome hostility and build a shared society. Can I ask if members are content with that wording?
Right.
Yeah.
Chair, apologies for being late. I had read that and was ready to contribute. Is it possible to enhance positive encounters? It sounds like it's a kind of a one-off event rather than an ongoing, I don't know, facilitating integration between diverse cultures, or, you know.
I've got to say, I think everybody was content.
Okay, fine. I'll make that comment. No problem. It's grand.
If I could just say, that was actually wording that had taken from their respective websites, so that was how I had arrived at that one.
No problem. That's grand.
Okay, if we agree that, I think I'm right in saying we can get this debated before recess, or in fact in time for the week. Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. Page 3 of table papers, members, is a copy of the Community Relations Council's 10-year review of Community Relations Week, there for your information. Assembly Outreach is facilitating the Northern Ireland Council for Ethnic Minorities, organising a Black and Minority Ethnic Parliament event, provisionally on the morning of Tuesday the 24th of June. The previous event on 1st of May provided the opportunity for participants to speak with ministers. The June event is a focus on interaction with ourselves as MLAs and also members of Parliament. Outreach would require 5 to 6 members of this committee to participate in a speed networking session, duration approximately 1 hour. At this stage, is anybody prepared to volunteer? Or could I ask that we get volunteers' names to the office in the next 48 hours?
You can have my name, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else ready to commit? Alex, are you happy enough that your group comes back by Friday?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. George, Brenda?
I need to check the diary, is that okay?
Is it okay if you get back by Friday?
Oh, we'll do, yeah.
Okay, and Leslie and I will confirm. Just need to look at the diary. Thank you very much. Page 6 of your pack is an invitation from the Committee for Education to attend something called The World in Your Classroom. It's an event on Tuesday the 27th of May in the Long Gallery at 12:30 p.m. Could you please contact the office if you wish to attend. Page 8 is current invitations. And next is agenda item 3. You've got the draft minutes of the meeting of the 7th of May at page 10 in your pack. So are we content to agree the draft minutes?
Agreed.
Thank you. Page 17, a response from the Committee for Education in relation to underachievement among Protestant boys, as highlighted in the 3rd Community Relations Council Peace Monitoring Report. We're advised it has recently received briefings on the trends in international mathematics and science study, TIMS, / progress in international reading literacy study, and the NISRA GCSE A-level data reproduced in the CRC report. It's also due to receive a briefing on 14th of May on the longitudinal study of attainment by boys in Northern Ireland in the University of Ulster's report, Taking Boys Seriously. In the absence of comment, I would suggest we be content to note. Page 19 is the list of outstanding correspondence. And again, I think it's well worth noting that it's now down to very manageable proportions. Thank you very much, Clerk. Members, page 22 of your pack, we have correspondence from the Northern Ireland Ombudsman providing comment on the Public Administration Select Committee's report, Time for a People's Ombudsman Service. Our Ombudsman is highlighting the PASC is recommending that new Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman legislation be introduced at Westminster and that it be done so as a priority by a minister appointed with policy responsibility for that legislation, and that we might find the recommendations useful as we consider our own draft bill. I would just say that many of the Select Committee's recommendations for new powers for that Ombudsman are actually already in our proposed NIPSO bill. So are we content simply to note at present?
Yeah, content.
Okay. Page 26, you'll find a copy of the Strategic Online Report on progress against Programme for Government Commitments. This was made publicly available on Monday last, 12th of May, and we should get a briefing on the detailed progress of OFMDFM's commitments next month. So again, content to note in the meantime.
Yes.
Page 51, copy of correspondence from the Committee for Enterprise, Trade and Investment to our department in relation to the Barroso desk officers and how it ensures the dissemination of information from Brussels to the committee and the wider public is efficient and effective. I think this is a follow-on from previous correspondence between that committee and the department. So again, unless members have a specific comment, we shall note. On to table papers, members, page 19 is an invitation to an event which the Committee for Enterprise, Trade and Investment is hosting with the Green Investment Bank on the 10th of June. The theme is energy. Again, if members want to attend, could they please inform the committee office. Also entabled at page 22, correspondence from the Northern Ireland Human Rights Commission on the Northern Ireland Office's proposal to reduce funding by 11.15%. Could I say, members, I was approached and have met the Human Rights Commission, who told me they were going around all the stakeholders. Their issue is that having already absorbed, I think they said 25% of efficiencies and cuts, they're being asked to take on board another 11+%. And their contention is that this will actually impact on their work, that they're now in a position of having to make choices not on a strategic basis but on a ad hoc basis. They don't have the resource to do everything they want to do. So on the one hand, you could argue that the Human Rights Commission is not devolved and therefore doesn't come under our purview. On the other hand, the Executive and the Assembly relies on the Human Rights Commission to advise, for example, if legislation is human rights compliant or if there are human rights issues. So the question is, do we want to invite them in as a matter of urgency to brief us further on the implications of this proposed 11.15% cut?
I think it'd be useful.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Okay, members, we now receive a briefing from departmental officials on their consultation on delivering social change for children and young people. Members should note the department has only provided an update on progress rather than the analysis which we had requested and which we'd scheduled in our forward work programme. Officials are advising us analysis is not yet complete, and therefore the documents supplied are not the summary of responses. Officials are offering to brief members only on the general initial findings. On page 55 of your packs is the clerk's brief, which provides an overview of the document. Papers at page 57 onwards provide information on the consultation process and some of the emerging themes. The closing date for submissions was the 31st of March, and a copy of the consultation document is at page 72. Also included in your packs at page 173, a copy of Corlia and the Gael Scoleocta's response to the consultation sent to the organisation to this committee. Members may also be interested in the response from the Northern Ireland Commissioner for Children and Young People, which is tabled at page 25. So we welcome to the committee Janet Smith, Patricia Carey and Margaret Rose McNaughton. Margaret, I'll offer you up to 5 minutes for opening remarks.
Well, thank you very much, Chair, and can I just thank the committee for putting back this meeting to allow Janet and others to attend the Disability Roundtable discussion. Can I just start off by saying that I'm aware that the committee may well have been expecting a final analysis document today. That document is not yet complete, but we felt that it would be very useful to come along and discuss the emerging themes and get any further comments that you may want to make so that we can include them in the final document. We'll then come back to the committee then when that document has been finalised. I'm very happy to go through it in more detail at that time. But in terms of the consultation document itself and the response to the consultation, we've had a very significant response, I think, to the consultation. There's been widespread engagement, even though it was just over the 10-week period. And I can talk a bit more about the events that we had. But you will see from the paper that was sent to you the main themes coming through the consultation. Now, I'm not sure, Chair, what way you want to handle this. I can go through each of those and talk a bit more about each of the themes, if that would be useful. Or, if you want to have a general conversation now about them.
Well, in the absence of you having a prepared statement, we'll just go for a chat. What's the reason for the delay? Because as I was saying to the committee, we had this scheduled in our forward work programme for some time, that you'd come with the analysis, which is not yet ready. So what happened? Why are we at this position and not where we wanted to be?
Well, there was a significant response to the consultation. We have, our NISRA colleagues have done a full analysis now. We have a draft document that is almost finalised. And the only other issues I think we want to put into it is any further comments that the committee might have, so that they can be fully reflected in it. And I would expect, after the meeting today, that we can finalise the document and it'll then go for onward transmission to ministers.
Well, are you saying that we're part of the formalisation and the finalisation?
Oh, no, not at all. No.
Okay, you say, you said twice it's a significant response. How do you justify that? What's the definition of significant?
Well, we had over 200 written responses. And we've had over 300 people attend the main consultation events. As well as that, the various events that we went to discuss the document, at events like the poverty event at Belfast City Council. There were numerous other people at those events. I think in total about 700 people we were able to communicate this to. The responses that we got back as well were fairly significant responses. So there has been, I think, a large number of people. There has been certainly really good engagement with the sector as well.
Okay. The Commissioner for Children and Young People has responded, and significantly. I would concur with that assessment. But the Commissioner was not consulted in the preparation of this. Why was that?
Well, I think, in terms of the consultation, the pre-consultation, we had informal discussions, but no significant pre-consultation with her. And I think, in hindsight, that was certainly that wasn't the right way to do this. I think that's one of the main things that's come through in this consultation was the lack of stakeholder engagement, and I think that is one thing that we want to take forward as we go into the future and decide what way this document is going to actually pan out. Stakeholder engagement will be absolutely crucial throughout it.
Okay, well, you're being candid, and I respect that. But how does it happen that you're talking about designing a consultation process? You know that there is a commissioner who is employed and paid to be the champion for children and young people, and you ignore them.
No, I don't think it was. It certainly wasn't our intention to ignore them.
You don't fully utilise and respect her position.
Yes. Well, except that we didn't fully utilise the services of.
So why not?
Well, that may be down to just my own fault through just being in the department at that time, and I will accept full responsibility for that. But what I do want to do from here on in is make sure that I have full engagement with the sector. I have actually met with the Children and Young People Strategic Partnership, because I think they are actually one part of the sector who will bring significant expertise to the development of any further strategy. And I do want to involve them in, whether it's a co-design process or whatever the main options are coming out of this consultation, and however we take forward this document. I think it'll be crucial that they're involved in it.
The Children's Commissioner has a statutory duty in this area.
He has, yes.
Commenting on what you've done, the Commissioner has said, and I quote, "The Commissioner does not consider that the proposed vision or outcomes are an improvement on those contained in the current 10-year children's strategy."
No, that's right. She has said that, and I have since spoken.
Is she right?
With her. Yes, I think that is actually a fair criticism of the document. I think we do need to look at the vision. I think there are a couple of areas within the vision that we probably need to reflect upon and reconsider again. I think someone also said to me that there's an issue that perhaps it's the idea of a citizen. Some children in particular weren't quite sure what citizen meant as well. So it is something that we certainly will want to look at.
I think the outcomes that were set out in the Children and Young People strategies, it's very reassuring to know that there is such regard for them from the Children's Commissioner and from others. What we were trying to do in the Child Poverty Strategy was ensure that we were continuing to take into account emerging issues around children, around children's rights, and around the poverty and the initiatives and the policies that have been developed since the Children and Young People's Strategy was created. So in many ways it allowed us to test those, and we are taking full account now of the feedback that we had from that. As I said, it's reassuring to know that those, in the Commissioner's views and in other people's views, that those outcomes have stood the test of time and are robust, because that gives us a very sound basis on which to proceed. But obviously in any consultation there'll be a wide range of views, and I think there would be others who would, and this will obviously be developed further as the full analysis is available, there'll be others who will be saying maybe some adjustment needs to be made, maybe we need to focus more on certain areas. So again, it's part of the full consultation that we've got the Commissioner's views, and we're very grateful for her valued views, and it gives us the opportunity then to say, well, maybe what we had in Children and Young People Strategy wasn't too far away from the ideal.
So what weight do you give to the Commissioner's views, given that she is the statutory champion, compared to others who take a contrary view to her?
Well,
I think, sorry, Patricia.
Well, so it was for Patricia, because she made the comment.
I think we give weight to her views. She has a
but what
statutory role. I don't think there's an easy scientific way to say it. I mean, she won't have had. There'll be a range of views expressed on a range of different aspects of the policy. We had thought about bringing together three main areas, including the children's rights area in terms of UNCRC, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, child poverty and children and young people's issues. So again, there were comments made about that, and the Commissioner will have a view on that as well. So it wasn't as if there was one view expressed on the same view on every aspect of the policy. So in the final analysis, I think regard has to be given, obviously, to this Commissioner's views, but we will also then have to look at the whole outcome of the consultation document and consider things in the round.
Tricia, I'm not picking on you, but that doesn't make sense to me. Okay, let's start again.
Well,
The Commissioner
other way-
says the Commissioner does not consider that the proposed vision or outcomes are an improvement on those contained in the current 10-year children's strategy. She's saying, as I see it, you're trying to reinvent the wheel. You're saying that's one comment among many comments. I'm saying that's true, but she is the Commissioner with the statutory role to champion children and young people's rights. What weight does that comment have against the comment of others who have responded?
We have a responsibility, obviously, to consult and to consult widely, to consult with children, to consult with their representatives, to consult with families. I think if we were only going to take the view of the Commissioner, we wouldn't then have a reason to consult anyone else. We obviously...
That's not what I'm asking you. What weight do you give to the Commissioner's view compared to the others who you are, quite rightly, properly consulting?
I think, as I've said, in terms of the outcomes specifically, the Commissioner is saying they're strong, they're robust. Others are saying that as well. Others, again, are questioning whether or not they need to be developed. So the final analysis hasn't been done, and final proposals haven't been made. But it's the Commissioner's views will be given a significant amount of weight given her statutory role.
A significant amount of weight.
Sufficient.
Okay. There were 47 people at 4 public consultation events held outside Belfast. Are you satisfied that was a good return?
Well, and I think within the time scale, I think that was a fair representation. Janet, you have details of all of the consultation events that took place. You know, some people were not able to attend, and we recognise that. But we did try to make ourselves available, as far as possible. While we didn't have any actual events in Omagh, I think we did go to Irvinstown. So we did try to get around the country as much as possible.
And did they all last, I think it was 2 hours you'd set aside for the consultations, public consultations?
It depended just on how long. I mean, some of them probably lasted longer.
Yes, we were happy, Chair, to stay as long as the conversation lasted within each of those events. On some occasions we would have stayed there perhaps for 3 hours, but we were happy, and Irvinstown was one of those cases. We stayed quite late, but we were happy to do that. And I will stress that we did advertise in the local papers right across the board for those 6 public consultation events. We also used, Chair, the stakeholders, children's stakeholders, to help us advertise each of those events for the purposes of trying to get as many people as we possibly could along to those. Now, the event that you're talking about that 7 people turned to or turned up at were actually quite surprised themselves that there were only 7 people there, and the individual involved in organising and helping us organise that said that they couldn't have gone any wider in relation to how they communicated the message of where the event was going to be, and they really did, and as we did, tried to advertise and give people the opportunity to attend. One suggestion that actually came from that event, Chair, was that with today's digital improvements and how we're moving forward and how people communicate, that perhaps we could look at not just advertising in papers, because sometimes people nowadays perhaps don't actually read the local papers or the media, and we maybe look at some other forms. So we've taken that back to our Executive Information Services and asked them to consider how we can improve and how we can reach out further to try and encourage as many people to attend consultation events.
For the record, I didn't mention 7 people at one meeting.
I'm sorry.
But clearly 7 people did attend
Yes.
one meeting, and therefore 40 people attended the other 3 in total. Okay. Was 10 weeks enough?
10 weeks probably could have. Doing this again, we probably would be aiming to go for the full 12 weeks at least. I mean, 10 weeks, I appreciate, was pretty tight for most people. But I do have to say, I mean, my team did do their utmost to get round as many people as possible.
But in fairness, you were under pressure because you had a statutory duty to lay a report.
Well, that was the intention at that time, was to lay the report in the Assembly at that
So
stage.
you got it in on time?
No, the report hasn't been laid as yet. And indeed, I think the UK report hasn't been laid as yet either.
Right, so you've missed a statutory deadline?
We'd missed the statutory deadline, yes.
So you could have done 12 weeks?
Well, I mean, hindsight, yes.
What involvement did children and young people have in drafting the consultation and the strategy?
Well, the children and young people weren't actually involved directly in the drafting of the strategy.
Same as Commissioner for Children and Young People. Why not involve the people who are most impacted by the strategy?
Well, I mean, but I take that on board, absolutely. I think what we do now is, we put forward our options for how we take forward the document as a result of a consultation. I think one of those options is probably, going to be an engagement now with the sector in how we develop, maybe the 10-year strategy. I mean, it was never our intention to dilute the 10-year strategy, the child poverty strategy, or the UNCRC obligations. And I think some people probably are concerned that that was what the document was doing, and the document, I can see the document was not clear enough in that regard. So, an option may well be to take forward, well, certainly to keep the 10-year strategy going for the next 2 years, because it expires, I think, in 2016 anyhow, and then work with our stakeholders, work with the children, to develop something, that will come into being in 2016.
One of the concerns expressed was around the lack of kind of concrete measurables and specific indicators. How do you respond?
Yeah, I think that's another fair comment. I also think that now that the UK has issued their document for consultation, I think their consultation finishes on the 22nd of May, they are actually looking at new measures as well, and there are 2 additional measures that they are planning for the future. One around entrenched poverty and another one around improving life's chances. So, they are also looking at new measures. I think this is an opportunity as well, following the consultation and the responses that people have made, for us, again, to look at the indicators and the measures that we have in place. And we absolutely will do that. My NISRA colleagues are looking at that for me.
I'm afraid I have to go back to the Commissioner for Children and Young People, who also proposed, and I quote, "a thorough and inclusive review be conducted over the next 12 to 18 months to determine which aspects of the current strategy and its delivery were successful and which were not, in order to inform the new strategy." Is this going to be done?
Well, I mean, certainly the proposals or the comments that the Commissioner has made will be put forward, and the options for taking forward our document now into the future will be, we will very much be taking on board what the Commissioner has said there. You'll appreciate that I haven't put those options forward yet, to my own ministers, and they will want to take the decisions on how this will actually, how the document will actually be taken forward. But that's certainly one option, that we would want to do a thorough review of the current strategy. It's final. It will be finished in 2016 in any case. We will work with the sector to develop a new strategy from 2016. That's in terms of the 10-year strategy. In terms of the child poverty strategy, we have carried out a review of the child poverty strategy, and again, that review should be probably for publication fairly shortly. I'm not quite sure of what the timescale is for that.
I hear what you say, that what the Commissioner is proposing is one option. Mm-hmm. Fine, I mean, that is factually accurate, but it is one option coming from the person with a statutory duty in the legislation that sets up the office to advise ministers on the effectiveness of policy. So is it not really more than just one option? Is it not a case that actually not to take the Commissioner's advice would need for you to make an argument to say this is why we are not accepting de facto what the Commissioner says? I
think obviously if the Commissioner is saying that, that would be a very strong case, obviously, for looking at looking at her view on how we would take it forward, I think it would be remiss of us not to be putting that as a very strong case for actually taking account of her views. But I couldn't at this stage say that we will, absolutely take on board every one of the comments that the Commissioner has said.
And I think the Commissioner herself, certainly something she would be saying to the Department would be that we should consult very widely with children and their families and young people. So again, I think she would be very clear that as part of this consultation we should ensure that the voices of all those children are heard and that we reflect on those, and that will be part of the consultation process. So again, I don't think the Commissioner herself would be saying that her view and her view alone is the one that we should always follow. I think she would want that to be informed by the wide consultation and the wide consultation responses that we have completed.
Let me just re-quote what she said. A thorough and inclusive review be conducted.
And I think, sorry, Chair, sorry to cut across, Patricia, but I think in taking forward any revision of the strategy or new strategy, because the 10-year strategy is only up to 2016, I think that is the way that the most strategies would be actually prepared. Most new strategies would take account of the previous strategy and what happened, and would be very inclusive of all the stakeholders, including children and young people.
I think I'm right in saying last time you were with us, you were going out into this consultation process. We thought, I think it was 8 weeks, and we thought that was short, and in fairness, it became 10 weeks. I think I'm also right in saying that you were, at that point, preparing a kind of child-friendly version of the consultation document, but that hadn't. At what point was it ready and distributed within the 10-week consultation period? Was it on day one, or at what point?
Oh no, it wasn't on day one. Now it was
day one.
The consultation document in itself was launched on the Monday, and the child-friendly version was available the following Wednesday. So it was approximately 7 to 8 working days after the launch of the consultation.
And how many responses did you get to the child-friendly version?
Well, the child-friendly version, we went out to consultation with the children and young people themselves. So that particular document was used as part of that consultation process. We had, the child-friendly version was also produced by Participation Network, and it was QA'd by the NICCY, Northern Ireland Children's Commissioner for Young People.
Quality assured, just for the record.
Yes. We went out, and the children and young persons version was actually used for focus groups with approximately 120 children and young people between the ages of 7 and 19. And that was facilitated by an organisation called Youth Forum NI. The document was also used by Playboard, because we had an event specifically for children in W5, and the document was circulated to all of the children at that event, and we discussed the document, or the Playboard discussed the document with children as well at that event. So we had a series of approximately 9 focus groups with 120 children and young people, at which that document was used along with other materials. And we also used the document whenever we went to other children's groups. For example, we went down to meet with officials, met with representatives of Barnardo's Disabled Children and Young People's Participation Project, the Sixth Sense advocacy group as well. So we used it for that purposes. We went up to the Derry City Forum in the Guildhall to take on board the views of teenagers and young people, and we also used the document for that. Some adults actually used us actually asked as well, could they have sight of the children and young people's document, because they actually liked the design of it and the way it was laid out, and felt that if it was read initially, that it would also help them understand the consultation document. So in relation to your question, the document was used quite widely, specifically for those children's focus groups and to the groups that we actually went out to visit as well, as and when we were required to do so.
Okay, thank you. Just so I'm clear in my own mind, Janet, was the document then that said those focus groups each child was given a copy, or was it used by the facilitator as a guide?
Well, each child would have been given a copy, but it would have also been used by the facilitator. But the facilitator also produced a package of other materials to help assist them walk the children through the process of the document.
Thank you. Thanks, Maskey.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation so far. I'm a wee bit sort of uncertain as to where, how far we can go, because if you haven't got the analysis done yet, then obviously you're giving us a report on the consultation, and therefore it's difficult to kind of get into the detail of maybe what some of us want to. Because as I read the kind of, just get the straight the processes here and some of the meetings that were held, I mean, there's some numbers of people who are attending and making submissions. I can't really second guess the quality of some of those presentations. I'm presuming the list of organisations they were quite substantive. But obviously others might have a different view of the small numbers attending events. But obviously you've got to make an assessment ultimately and come back to us and say, or come back to the department first and foremost, but obviously we were ruling that to kind of try and quantify in our own mind whether there has been a good enough job done in the consultation. For me, I mean, I'm looking at some of the emerging findings, and you're saying the majority of the consultees support the use of outcomes-based approach, but then there are other concerns that there aren't enough indicators or specific actions, so that's a bit of a contradiction. I don't know what weight to put on either of that. I presume on your analysis you'll have to come back to us on that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I would have thought, I mean, normally, and I'm just trying to get my own mind settled on this, I mean, clearly we're into the 8th year or whatever of the strategy, 10-year strategy, so at this point in time you'd think you'd be kind of not doing a wrap-up, but I mean, there wouldn't have much left in it, 2 years where it's come to an end, but obviously we don't want to be wasting any time at the end of this 10 years, so we want to be hitting the ground running. I would have thought there would have been a lot of lessons already learned over the past 8 years, and some of the evidence that the department would have just continually in recent times would let you know whether the proposals in the consultation document are anywhere near good enough to address shortcomings in the last lot of years, because clearly we know we're not meeting our needs and we're not meeting our targets. Some cases we know child poverty levels are likely to increase, maybe significantly, so I would have thought on that basis we need to be upping our game in terms of what proposals we're setting out there to be consulted on. So can you give us any kind of comfort in terms of, again, accepted you haven't done an analysis, but are any of those concerns which have been addressed or have been identified? I mean, is the department concerned about those? I know you've identified them, so presuming there is some level of concern, but trying to work out, again, the question the chair put, what weight are you putting on some of these more negative responses that you're getting?
I mean, I think it's a fair point. I mean, that there is. I mean, some people have said, of course, that they agree with the outcomes-based approach, but I think the concern is that they need to see more clearly what the indicators are, and they need to see more clearly what the targets are likely to be. Now, in a lot of the cases, we have targets within the programme for government. And we were not shying away, but we were not including specific targets in the original document because we didn't want to confuse targets and indicators. We didn't want people to concentrate on meeting a target just for the sake of meeting a target. We wanted to concentrate people's minds on the outcome rather than on the target. If you can, but clearly, we need to be looking at the indicators and then the targets whenever we move forward in whatever format this document takes, whether it goes forward as just a child poverty strategy in its own right, and we develop a new 10-year children's strategy on foot of that as well, and if it goes forward as a child poverty strategy, we need to look at the targets that are maybe coming out of England as well, because there are some of those targets that will be very relevant. There's some of those measures will be very relevant here as well. So while we haven't got the analysis done, I think we are concerned to ensure that we fully reflect the comments that people have made, but also ensure that we take on board the new measures that are coming in from England as well, like measures around children's life chances, and how we get an indicator for that and how we can work on a target for that. So, I do accept that there are concerns around lack of targets, really.
Sharon, can I just follow up on that? Thank you. But, I mean, obviously, there was one concern there about would the proposals like dilute the impact of each of the three separate strands of all that, and I don't know whether or not, but they're all clearly interlinked.
Yeah.
So, and again, even the figures from the Institute of Fiscal Studies will obviously give us a cause for concern, and other indicators about that there are problems. I don't want to be obviously diminishing some of the very good work that's been done and going on, and not diminishing the challenges that are out there either, because of the whole economy and the way that's gone in recent years. But I would sort of be looking for more comfort that we'd be taking a more radical approach, preparing the end this 10-year strategy and looking forward to the new one. So, like, I would want to be satisfied that actually, you know, whether or not we're giving people specific targets. So whether they're focusing on targets or not, they clearly have to focus on outcomes. The only way to get an outcome is to give yourself a target to reach it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would be looking for some satisfaction that we're going to have a radical approach in some of this.
Okay. And certainly we'll take that back. We will make sure that this is reflected in the analysis document.
Thank you.
Happy? Deputy Chair, Chris Little.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for your presentation. Building on the questions in relation to the Commissioner for Children and Young People, the Commissioner in correspondence said that she had hoped that as the 10-year strategy came to a close, there would be an opportunity for the development of a new strategy rooted in the UN Convention for the Rights of a Child, and that it's disappointing to see that this is not in the current plan, and that the proposed strategy is merely a slight rewrite of 6 high-level outcomes. The concern in relation to the UNCRC is something that's coming through in a number of consultation responses. How would you respond to that?
Well, no, I mean, absolutely, that's a fair point, and I think that's why, you know, it may be that the best approach is to, to separate out the child poverty strategy at this stage, and then begin the review and, the development of a new 10-year strategy. And the 10-year strategy then would actually sit at the top of these strategies, and out of that would flow the child poverty strategy, and all, of course, you would also ensure that we deliver on our obligations on UNCRC. There already is a commitment from the executive to the progressive implementation of UNCRC. There has been work that I think it was Laura Lundy and Rhoda Byrne from Queen's University have done on the child rights, and we are considering that, and we will want to consider that all then as part of taking forward any new 10-year strategy, which would link in with what the Commissioner is saying in terms of UNCRC.
Because the UNCRC is not just about child poverty,
obviously. Oh, no.
And one of the other pieces of feedback appears to be that that the Children and Young People strategy was very much achieving outcomes for all children and young people, and that the proposed delivering social change framework seemed to be moving towards a narrow focus around just child poverty, to the exclusion of some of the more of all children. Why were the 3 strands brought together? What was the thinking behind that, and are you giving serious consideration to not taking that proposed approach now then?
Well, that is one of the options we will be putting forward, that we don't take that proposed approach now. I think the intention was good initially because there were so many documents out there and the outcomes all appeared to be fairly similar. And the work of the Child Poverty Outcomes Model that the National Children's Bureau had carried out for us, I mean, it had clearly identified 4 very specific outcomes, but very specific to child poverty. And I think what happened then with the Delivering Social Change for Children, it did focus just on, or not just on, but it did focus primarily on children in poverty. Although I suppose there was a view that if you did focus on children in poverty and you did put in place measures to alleviate that poverty, that would have a general it would flow out to children of all groups and all it would flow out across all children's groups, not just children in poverty. So if you tackled one end, but clearly there is the fear or the concern that we have lost something in the 10-year strategy if we continue to include it as part of this DSC for children. So if we do, complete what we need to complete now on the child poverty strategy, and then, start a process of developing a new 10-year strategy now, when we have about 18 months or 2 years to have a new one in place, that's our opportunity probably then to, ensure that these concerns are actually taken on board and that the new strategy reflects what people are, need to see.
Chair, I'm going to try and cut my questions short because I know a lot have already been asked to try and be fair to a certain extent as well. But you have a huge number of organisations, that share a common goal of seeing positive outcomes achieved for children and young people. It doesn't look like the consultation process has gone as well as it could have in terms of engaging with that wealth of expertise. So is there some way to better engage with that expertise and ensure that you utilise that in the work that's being done? And last, how much cooperation has there been across the executive in relation to this approach? Because it has to be cross-departmental. One of the UNCRC comments, for example, is one of the aims is the development of the child's personality, talents, mental and physical abilities to their fullest potential. I think one of the criticisms was the vision in your document was a bit industrial. So you can, a quick glance at UNCRC sees how there's kind of much wide-ranging positive aims for all children. Is there a way to utilise those organisations to feed that in and try and generate a bit more cross-departmental cooperation on this as well? Because there is work being done. It just doesn't feel like it's being collected together to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think in terms of stakeholder engagement, I think you're right. And I have recently met with the Children and Young People's Strategic Partnership. They are the group, I think, that there probably is representations from the majority of the key stakeholders are also on that CIPSP group. And they are the group that I would want to work with, going into the future now in developing any new 10-year strategy. And they are the ones that I would hope that will be able to help in co-designing a new strategy. And they will be able to advise on the UNCRC, for example. That's absolutely vital, I think, that we engage with them. In terms of departments, we have been discussing and engaging with the departments throughout the course of the development of this, and they are also on the programme boards and they're represented there. So, there's always more that we can do in engaging with them, and perhaps that they are another. Well, we'll obviously be engaging with them as we go forward in this, but we probably maybe just need to be more proactive in terms of engaging with them.
I think, in closing, Chair, I think it's got confusing. I think it's getting confusing to people who are experts at understanding these types of issues. So, dear knows how easy to understand it is to people on the ground. So my hope is that there's progress made fairly quickly because it's a really important issue. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Is there anything to be learned from the victims side of things, Margaret? Because you obviously have the department with specialists within the department looking at this, providing the funding. You have a commissioner, in the same way you have a children and younger persons commissioner. But supporting the victims commissioner is a forum made up of stakeholders with considerable knowledge. And then you have a service, the Victims and Survivors Service. So you kind of have the four key points on the wheel: the department, the commissioner, the forum and the service. And that seems to me to be a kind of virtuous circle that works, or certainly in theory.
Obviously, I'm not that familiar with the whole victims area, but it's certainly something I think we could look at. And are you thinking in lines of a stakeholder forum?
Well, you're talking, to Chris about this body that you feel you want to engage with further going forward. It seems to me maybe that is in some way a mirror of what the forum might be. The service provides for maybe 100 groups as well as for individuals. It's just a thought. Right, the Child Poverty Act of 2010 set up a Social Mobility and Child Poverty Commission. And I understand it was the intention that there would be a Northern Ireland representative on that commission. Why do we not have a representative?
That's still under consideration in the department.
Why?
That's my understanding. I mean, I'm not sure of the detail of that, to be perfectly honest, but I do know that it is being considered.
But this is 2014.
Yeah.
This is the Child Poverty Act 2010. And it envisages that Northern Ireland would be represented at the Social Mobility and Child Poverty Commission, which sounds to me like a relatively important body.
I think that's right, but I think there has also been amendments made to the Child Poverty Act through, was it the Welfare Reform Act in England?
There were amendments made. There was to be a commission set up, and indeed the first strategies were to be given to the commission for comment, and the individual devolved administrations and the UK government were supposed to take account of what the Commission said. That Commission wasn't set up in the form originally envisaged by the legislation. I think there was some time before a commission was set up, so I'm not absolutely sure of the detail, but the legislation did change and the role of the commission did change. So although it's 4 years, the commission wasn't in place for those 4 years, but we'll certainly get some information on that, because I know initially there was quite a bit of discussion around what that commission would do, but I think the view of the coalition government was maybe different to that of the government that had brought the Child Poverty Act into being, and therefore the role changed, and therefore any role for a representative from the devolved administrations would have changed as well.
I suppose you could argue if it took a while to set up this commission, it just gave you all the more time to pick the right person to represent you. Let me quote from the Children's Commissioner's letter here. This commission set up to advise the UK and devolved governments on meeting their responsibilities under the Child Poverty Act 2010 and develop and implement child poverty strategies. Under Section 13 of the Child Poverty Act, there is a legal requirement for the devolved administration to request the advice of the Social Mobility and Child Poverty Commission, and a responsibility on the Commission to respond. Nikki is not aware of this engagement having occurred. Is she right?
Are you aware of the...
It's currently under consideration at the minute.
What is under consideration?
Representation on the Commission.
Well, let me repeat that. There is a legal requirement for the devolved administration to request the advice of the Social Mobility and Child Poverty Commission. Has that been done? Have you sought their advice?
Not that I'm aware of.
So you're in breach of a statutory duty?
There may have been advice sought last year or the year before. I would need to look at that whenever we go back to the department, but not that I'm aware of.
I suppose the thing is we need to be clear of when that commission was actually established, and then what the amendments were through the Welfare Reform Act to that commission. Sorry, the amendments to the Child Poverty Act.
Well, I think this, according to the Children's Commissioner, it looks pretty clear. Section 13 of the Child Poverty Act puts a legal requirement on the devolved administration to request the advice of the Social Mobility and Child Poverty Commission. I think it's disturbing that you can't even say definitively whether or not you have met that obligation.
Well, can I come back to the committee on that, Chair?
Please do,
yeah.
Yes. Colia na Gaelscoile Octa suggests the inclusion of a separate outcome specifically identifying and addressing the need for the linguistic needs of children to be addressed. Is this under consideration?
Sorry, can you repeat that one again for me?
Yeah. Colia na Gaelscoile Octa suggests a separate outcome specifically identifying and addressing the need for linguistic needs of children to be addressed. Is that under consideration?
Well, as part of the response, I suppose that, as part of the analysis of the responses, there's one area that, yes, we will be looking at as well. But that's just part of that and many other areas.
Okay. George Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at your consultation venues, and I know the time frame was very, very, very short. I noticed that there's been no events that's taken place in Coleraine, for example. Korean's a fairly big catchment area, into consideration Portrush, Port Stewart, Castle Rock, etc., etc. Was there any reason for it? It's not a criticism of himself, but just, was there a reason for that? Why that didn't take place?
No, there wasn't any specific reason for not going to Coleraine. We went to Ballymena and had good discussions with public and we also went up to Derry, London Derry, so there was no specific reason why we didn't choose Coleraine. We just went to Ballymena and Derry, London Derry.
As I say, it takes in a fairly big catchment area when you consider possibly Lima Valley as well. It's just disappointing that there wasn't a stakeholders event took place in that particular area.
We'll certainly note that for any future consultation events that we will consider Coleraine and Lima Valley.
I would like to think you would do that. Be very much appreciated.
Okay, members, are we content? Okay, well, obviously, this is, I suppose, by way of an interim briefing in that we await the full analysis. So, in the meantime, Patricia, Janet, Margaret Rose, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Members, just to complete the session, probably all aware of it anyway, but the legislation that underpins the creation of the Commission for Children and Young People, at point 7, duties of the Commissioner. The Commissioner shall advise the Secretary of State, the Executive Committee of the Assembly and any relevant authority on matters concerning the rights or the best interests of children and young persons, A, as soon as reasonably practical after receipt of a request for advice, or B, on such other occasions as the Commissioner thinks appropriate. It just seems to me wrong that it's B, that Patricia has to go chasing them. Surely, for something like this, the Commissioner should be consulted about the design, and young people and children should be consulted.
And I think that, you've highlighted that, I think, very appropriately, and ours with myself and probably everybody else around the room, that we appear to have statutory obligations because have not been addressed. If that's the case, I would think that'd be most unsatisfactory. I think we should be asking the department, have they met their obligations in this regard? I don't know what weight you might put on any submission, Commissioner or otherwise, but at least I would have liked to have heard if a Commissioner has made points, whatever they may be, the department would have a response to that, if you know what I mean. So, even aside the fact that the Commission appeared not to have been, in the first instance, consulted, and that doesn't mean that they have to be given all the weight. But nevertheless, if the Commissioner, first of all, hadn't been consulted formally as you would expect that they would have been, if the Commissioner was making some contrary views that the Department held or challenging the consultation, recommendations or whatever, I would like to think the Department would be addressing that and coming here saying, well, we've addressed that, and if you know what I mean, and sort them out, because there can be misunderstandings, for example, I've been generous here, but at the same token, if somebody's making submissions, you would like to think that they would have been addressed, and we would get some benefit of that, or some flavour of, we've got, now there was an attempt, I think, with Patricia to saying that the Commissioner accepted some other things which were good, but I just don't think it's good enough to present. And if there are other statutory obligations, like the one you last raised, that would give me cause for concern. Seriously. And I thought that this committee took a view a while ago that while there was a statutory requirement to table a report and all the rest of that in the Assembly, we would have rather taken a rap on the knuckles for missing the deadline to ensure there was proper consultation. Now going to
looks like we've missed the deadline and not taken the advantage.
We would need to be satisfied that that consultation was done properly.
I would agree, Alex. I think, if the department takes the view it's worth creating a commission, and off the top of my head I imagine it's $1 to $1.5 million a year to run it, and then they run a process to appoint the right person to be the commissioner. and they have those legal duties, and you don't consult them, that's bad. If they offer an opinion, surely the obligation then is to say either we accept that opinion or here's why we are taking a contrary view on this occasion. Which may be because in our consultations we've discovered that most people are actually diametrically opposed or slightly off your theme. So I know Margaret Rose said she would come back to us on that statutory obligation under the 2010 Act, but I think we should write and say we do expect as a matter of urgency. And any other?
And in respect of the commission that you raised as well.
Yes,
Membership law for consultation with.
Yeah, and any other statutory obligations. Just a full update on their fulfilment to all statutory obligations in this area.
Did we get an indication as to when the analysis might be complete?
She didn't say.
Don't do dates or deadlines or anything like that.
Last Friday.
She's finalising it after this meeting, in fairness, which suggests, but then it goes to ministers.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, so. Okay, members, the one other sort of substantive bit of business is we had that written briefing from the department on the summary of responses to the consultation they ran on good relations indicators. Started to look at it last week, and then we decided we'd put it back a week just to give people time to consider. It's at 188, and the clerk's brief, is at 188, and summary report thereafter. I'm just wondering, do members have any comments that they want to note at this stage?
I'd still be keen to have the officials in to ask questions in relation to the indicators, but that's just my...
Right. I mean, I think in fairness, Chris, we did have them in to talk about indicators before the...
No, yeah,
off,
absolutely.
so-
We didn't actually talk about the indicators specifically, though.
Well, we can either write to them and put specifics to them, such as comments on the issues raised, requests for the amendments that they might be considering, timeline for implementing, monitoring, on all the rest, or we can then ask them in. I'm open to members' views. Chris clearly would like an oral briefing.
There's never a lot of satisfaction, Chair, I have to say, out of these briefings.
Noted.
I presume at some point you would want to get a better and a clear understanding what the indicators will be, because that's part of
I
it.
agree with Chris. I think an oral briefing just helps you drill down on stuff. If you miss something in a written paper, you're able to
Okay.
get a verbal clarification. Yeah.
Alex, happy enough?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, members, on page 230 of your packs, a copy of the committee's forward work programme through to the end of this session. We've had an email from the department advising officials are unable to brief the committee on June monitoring proposals, which was scheduled for the 28th of May. They're requesting a reschedule for the 4th of June. Returns are to be with the Department of Finance and Personnel the next day, 5th of June. Are we content to allow the slippage? Of course, the big session between now and end of term is OFMDFM. That was a TBC. Are we on course?
Still haven't had any confirmation about OFMDFM or the juniors.
No confirmation about OFMDFM or the juniors. When was the last time we had OFMDFM?
We haven't had them this year, this session at all. We were at the committee on the 2nd of July, I think it was the 2nd of July.
2nd of July last.
End of June.
Well, we can,
26th of June it was last year.
and we can compel witnesses.
If you wish, we can wait again after the meeting.
Well, what's the view of the membership? Are we keen, very keen, insistent, determined that FMDFM?
When's the last time they were here, sir?
2nd of July last.
I
So-
think we should ask. I mean, I have no indication myself as to whether or not they won't confirm, but I think we should.
I mean, we've written them asked already, but we haven't never had a
Right.
date yet.
Okay.
I think it would be negative if the ministers for a committee didn't visit the committee in
In the
a
whole year.
full session.
Yeah.
And I think you're entitled to remind them that after June the 4th, the opportunities to come before the end of that session are slim and to seek a confirmation.
I think we should say to them we're anxious that they are here before the session.
Anxious that they come, that it would not help relations if they were to miss a whole session. Would that level of language be acceptable?
Is there a list of things we want to talk about?
Well, the usual format is that they would come in advance of the
And
briefing by
waffle.
officials on PFG, so they would generally come and do the overview, and then the officials come the following week with the detail. That's sort of general.
Yeah.
That's what happened certainly last year.
So what happened
Well,
at the end? That's the point. I'll be
Yeah, well, I think, and look, no, in fairness, they when they do come, they tend to be able to tackle anything that arises. Okay, well, I think we've got the kind of feel for the language. Okay. Page 42, table papers, is a note from the Bill Office in relation to the timetable for considering our draft NIPSO Public Service Ombudsman's Bill. Proposes a briefing on parts 2 and 3 on the 4th of June, and then a further briefing on the 2nd of July, covering revised parts 1 to 3, parts 4, which is the Judicial Appointments Ombudsman, and part 5, which is miscellaneous. Everybody content with that? Any other business? If not, we do not meet again until this day fortnight, Wednesday the 28th of May, 1:45 for that 15-minute session on tablets here in room 30.
I really need that.
The meeting is adjourned.
Committee room 30.